The Vermont hills were quiet that morning, too quiet for October 1944. Staff Sergeant William Hayes crouched in the makeshift observation post, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The wooden slats of what the other men mockingly called his chicken coop slit setup creaked as he shifted his weight. Through the narrow opening, he could see the valley below, where German forces had dug in after their unexpected push through the Ardennes had somehow reached American soil in this alternate timeline of the war. William had always been different. Back in Burlington, he was the kid who spent hours in his father's barn, studying the way light moved through cracks in the wood, how shadows played tricks on the eye. While other boys played baseball, he practiced stillness, watching deer move through the forest behind their property. His father, a veteran of the Great War, recognized something in his son, a patience that couldn't be taught, only nurtured. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, William was 19, working at his uncle's carpentry shop. He enlisted immediately, but his poor eyesight almost disqualified him. Almost. During basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, something remarkable happened. On the rifle range, while other recruits struggled with standard-issue Springfields, William requested permission to adjust his position. He built a small wooden frame, angled it just so, and proceeded to hit targets the range master swore were impossible at that distance. Captain Morrison had noticed. A gruff man from Texas with a scar running down his left cheek. Morrison saw potential where others saw peculiarity. He pulled strings, got William into specialized training. But even there, William's methods raised eyebrows. He didn't shoot like the others. He created what he called calculated concealment positions, structures that looked like debris but offered perfect sight lines and protection. Now, 3 months into the European campaign on American soil, a scenario nobody had planned for when German forces made an impossible Atlantic crossing, William found himself under the command of Major Richard Thornton. Thornton was everything William wasn't. Loud, conventional, a by-the-book officer who had earned his rank through family connections rather than field experience. His father was a decorated general. His grandfather had served under Pershing. Thornton believed in overwhelming firepower, direct assaults, traditional military doctrine. He hated William's chicken coop. 2 days earlier, during the morning briefing in the farmhouse they had converted into headquarters, Thornton had made his feelings clear. The room smelled of coffee and cigarette smoke. Maps spread across a wooden table that had probably hosted family dinners before the war came to Vermont. "William, I'm shutting down your little art project," Thornton had said, not even looking up from his papers. "We're soldiers, not farmers. You'll take a standard position with the rest of 2nd Platoon. Sir, with respect, the position I've constructed offers superior cover and sightlines that William had started." Thornton slammed his hand on the table. "I don't care about your sightlines, Sergeant. You're making us look like a joke. The men are calling it Hayes's henhouse. It's bad for morale. It's unconventional. And in my unit, we do things the right way." Lieutenant Cooper, a young officer from Maine who had seen William's effectiveness firsthand, tried to intervene. "Sir, Sergeant Hayes has successfully provided overwatch for 3 operations. His elimination of enemy officers has been—" Thornton cut him off. "Has been lucky. Luck runs out, Lieutenant. Sergeant Hayes will dismantle that structure by 1500 hours today. That's an order." William had saluted, his jaw tight, and left the room. But he hadn't dismantled anything. He couldn't. Not when he knew what was coming. Intelligence reports, the ones Thornton barely glanced at, indicated a high-value German target was moving through the valley. Major Klaus von Richter, a tactical genius who had orchestrated the impossible Atlantic operation, was reportedly inspecting forward positions. William had studied the patterns, the timing, the routes. Von Richter would be exposed for maybe 30 seconds, maybe less, at a distance that would challenge even the best marksman. But William wasn't just any marksman. As dawn broke over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, William checked his rifle one more time. The Springfield M1903A4 had been modified to his specifications, the scope calibrated perfectly. Around him, his chicken coop slit setup, constructed from salvaged barn wood, positioned at an angle that seemed random but was mathematically precise, waited silently. Below, he could see movement. German soldiers changing guard positions. Supply trucks moving carefully along the dirt road. And somewhere in that valley, a major who could change the course of the war was about to make a fatal mistake. William's radio crackled. "Hayes, this is Thornton. I'm sending men to tear down that structure. You have 10 minutes to clear out." William didn't respond. He couldn't, because through his scope, exactly where intelligence said he would be, Major Klaus von Richter had just stepped into view. 495 yards away, the distance of an impossible shot. William's finger rested gently on the trigger. His breathing slowed to almost nothing. Through the scope, he could see von Richter clearly now, tall, distinguished, the iron cross visible even at this distance. The German major was pointing at something, giving orders to 3 officers surrounding him. This was the moment. This was why William had built his position exactly here, exactly like this. But behind him, he heard boots crunching through fallen leaves. Heavy, angry footsteps. "Hayes, step away from that rifle." Now, Corporal Jensen and Private Matthews had arrived, sent by Thornton. Jensen, a stocky man from Ohio, looked uncomfortable. Matthews, barely 18, seemed terrified of disobeying orders. "Sir, we've been ordered to dismantle this position," Jensen said, his voice uncertain. "Major Thornton says you're to report to headquarters immediately." William didn't move. His eye remained fixed on the scope. Von Richter was still there, but moving slowly toward a covered position. 20 seconds, maybe less. "I have a shot," William whispered. "High-value target. 495 yards. If I don't take it now, he disappears." "Sergeant, we have our orders," Matthews said, reaching for William's shoulder. "Don't touch me, Private." William's voice was cold, controlled. "In 15 seconds, that man down there will be gone. He's the one who planned the Atlantic crossing. He's the reason we're fighting on American soil. Let me take the shot." Jensen shifted nervously. "Sergeant Hayes, Major Thornton was clear. He said if you don't comply, it's insubordination. That's court-martial territory." 10 seconds. Von Richter was laughing now at something one of his subordinates said, completely unaware. The wind had died down. Conditions were perfect. Everything William had calculated, everything he had prepared for, was converging in this single moment. "I'm not leaving," William said flatly. "You want to stop me, you'll have to pull me off this rifle." Matthews looked at Jensen, panic in his eyes. "What do we do?" Jensen reached for his sidearm, not to draw it, but resting his hand on it as procedure dictated. "Sergeant Hayes, I'm asking you one last time. 5 seconds." Von Richter turned, beginning to walk toward the covered trench. The shot was closing. The angle was shifting. It was now or never. "Then do what you have to do, Corporal," William said. "But that man dies today or hundreds of Americans die tomorrow. Your choice." The radio crackled again. Thornton's voice was furious. "Jensen, what's your status? Has Hayes complied?" Jensen stared at William, then at the valley below, then back at William. His hand moved away from his sidearm. He picked up the radio. "Sir, there's been a delay. The structure is more reinforced than we thought. We need more time." William exhaled slowly. Von Richter had stopped, turning back to point at something in the distance. The shot had reopened. 2 seconds. William squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against William's shoulder, the sharp crack echoing across the valley like thunder. For a moment, everything seemed suspended in time. Through the scope, William watched the bullet travel its impossible arc, dropping slightly as it covered the distance, compensating for wind and gravity exactly as he had calculated. 495 yards away, Major Klaus von Richter stopped mid-gesture. His hand went to his chest. He stumbled backward, confusion spreading across his face. Then he fell, collapsing into the arms of his officers who scrambled in panic. Chaos erupted in the German position. Soldiers dove for cover. Officers shouted orders, trying to locate where the shot had come from. But William's chicken coop design had worked perfectly. The muzzle flash had been concealed. The sound dispersed. They were shooting blindly at the hillside, nowhere close to his actual position. Jensen stood frozen, his mouth open. Matthews had gone pale, gripping his rifle with shaking hands. "Holy Mother of God," Jensen whispered. "You actually hit him. At that distance. Through that wind." William was already cycling the bolt, chambering another round, scanning for additional targets. One of von Richter's officers had dragged the major's body behind cover, but William could see the blood trail. Center mass. The shot had been true. The radio exploded with chatter. Multiple voices overlapping, confusion spreading through the American lines. Someone had heard the shot. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. Then Thornton's voice cut through, sharp and demanding. "All units, report. Who fired that shot? I want answers now." William lowered his rifle and picked up the radio himself. "This is Sergeant Hayes. I have confirmed kill on high-value target. Enemy major, 495 yards, center mass. Target is down." The radio went silent. 5 seconds passed. 10. The only sound was the distant shouting from the German position and the wind rustling through the trees. If you're still watching this story, if you're rooting for William and wondering what happens next, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Because what Thornton does next, nobody saw coming. Finally, Thornton's voice came back, each word clipped and cold. "Hayes, you are under arrest for insubordination and failure to follow direct orders. Jensen, Matthews, you will escort Sergeant Hayes to headquarters immediately. Bind his hands if necessary." "Sir," Jensen started, but this was a legitimate, "I don't care what it was, Corporal." He disobeyed a direct order from a superior officer in the field. In wartime, that's grounds for execution. "Bring him in. Now." William set down the radio and stood slowly, raising his hands. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes never left the valley below where medics were frantically working on von Richter's body. Matthews approached nervously with zip ties. "I'm sorry, Sergeant. I have to." "I know," William said quietly. "Just do your job, Private." As they bound his wrists, Lieutenant Cooper's voice cracked over the radio, breathless with urgency. "All units, be advised. Intelligence confirms target was Major Klaus von Richter. Repeat, von Richter is confirmed down. This changes everything." But William was already being led away from his chicken coop, away from his rifle, toward whatever judgment Thornton had waiting. The farmhouse headquarters was thick with tension when they arrived. Officers crowded around the main table, their voices rising in heated debate. Maps were being redrawn, radio reports coming in every few seconds. The death of von Richter had sent shockwaves through both sides of the conflict. Major Thornton stood at the head of the table, his face red with barely contained rage. When William was pushed through the door, hands still bound, Thornton's eyes locked onto him with pure contempt. "Clear the room," Thornton ordered. "Everyone except Hayes and these 2 guards." "Sir," Lieutenant Cooper protested, "intelligence is confirming that von Richter's death has caused complete disarray in German command. Their entire offensive structure was dependent on his tactical planning. We're receiving reports of units retreating, supply lines collapsing. This shot may have just—" "I said clear the room, Lieutenant." Thornton's voice was ice. Cooper hesitated, looked at William, then slowly filed out with the other officers. The door closed, leaving only William, Thornton, Jensen, and Matthews. Thornton walked slowly around William, like a predator circling prey. "You think you're special, don't you, Hayes? Think your little tricks make you above military discipline?" "I took the shot that needed to be taken, sir," William said calmly. "The shot that will save American lives. You disobeyed a direct order." Thornton stopped directly in front of him, in front of subordinates. "Do you understand what that does to command structure? To discipline? If I let you get away with this, every soldier in this unit will think they can just do whatever they want. With respect, sir, if I hadn't taken that shot, von Richter would have orchestrated attacks that would have killed dozens, maybe hundreds of our men. The intelligence was clear. The intelligence," Thornton spat, "that you decided was more important than the chain of command. You're not an intelligence officer, Hayes. You're not a strategist. You're a sergeant with a rifle who got lucky." The door burst open. A Colonel William had never seen before strode in, his uniform bearing the insignia of Army intelligence. Behind him were 2 MPs and another officer carrying a folder thick with documents. "Major Thornton," the colonel said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "I'm Colonel Harrison, 5th Army Intelligence. I need you to release Sergeant Hayes immediately." Thornton's face went from red to purple. "Colonel, with respect, this is my command." This man disobeyed direct orders. Orders that would have allowed a high-value enemy target to escape, Harrison interrupted, opening the folder. "We've been tracking von Richter for 8 months. He's not just a Major Thornton. He's the architect of the entire Atlantic operation. German command is in absolute chaos. We're intercepting communications showing 3 divisions withdrawing, supply chains breaking down. Sergeant Hayes just accomplished what an entire bombing campaign couldn't." Harrison pulled out a photograph and placed it on the table. It showed von Richter surrounded by Nazi high command, including several faces William recognized from intelligence briefings. This man, Harrison continued, was being groomed to replace Rommel. He was untouchable, always moving, always protected. Until today. Until a sergeant with a chicken coop and a 495-yard shot did the impossible. Colonel Harrison turned to Matthews. "Cut him loose." The young private fumbled with his knife, quickly slicing through the zip ties. William rubbed his wrists, saying nothing. His eyes fixed on Thornton, whose face had gone from purple to ashen white. "Major Thornton," Harrison continued, his tone now carrying barely concealed disgust, "you were briefed 3 days ago about a potential high-value target in this sector. You dismissed it. You told my intelligence officer, and I quote, that you didn't have time for wild goose chases. That intelligence was unconfirmed." Thornton stammered. "It was speculative at best. It was accurate, as Sergeant Hayes clearly understood." Harrison walked closer to Thornton. "While you were worried about how a wooden structure looked, about morale and convention, Hayes was studying patterns, calculating angles, preparing for the one shot that could change everything. And he made it." The colonel turned back to William. "Sergeant Hayes, on behalf of Army Intelligence and 5th Army Command, I apologize for the treatment you've received. Your actions today have potentially shortened this war by months. Thousands of American lives will be saved because you had the courage to do what needed to be done." "I was just doing my job, sir," William said quietly. "No," Harrison shook his head. "You did far more than that. Most men would have followed orders, dismantled that position, let the moment pass. You understood what was at stake and you acted. That's not just duty. That's extraordinary judgment under pressure." He pulled another document from his folder. "I'm recommending you for the Distinguished Service Cross. Additionally, Army Command wants you reassigned to a specialized unit we're forming. Scout snipers who think unconventionally, who can adapt to situations the textbooks don't cover." William glanced at Thornton, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. "Sir, what about Major Thornton's orders? The insubordination charge?" Harrison's expression hardened. "There will be no charges. In fact, Major Thornton will be submitting a full report explaining how his interference nearly cost us this opportunity. Won't you, Major?" Thornton's jaw clenched. "Yes, sir." "Good." Harrison gathered his papers. "Sergeant Hayes, you're to come with me. We have a debriefing in Boston, and then transportation to Washington. Some people at the Pentagon want to understand exactly how you made that shot." As William moved toward the door, Lieutenant Cooper pushed back in, breathless. "Sir, more reports coming in. German forces are in full retreat across 3 sectors. They're abandoning equipment, burning documents. It's a complete collapse of their forward command structure." Harrison smiled grimly. "That's what happens when you cut off the head of the snake." He looked at William. "All because of one impossible shot from a chicken coop everyone wanted torn down." Jensen stepped forward. "Sir, for the record, Sergeant Hayes never wavered. He knew what he had to do. We all saw it." Noted Corporal. Harrison opened the door. "Hayes, let's move. You have a country to save." As William walked out into the Vermont afternoon, the sun breaking through the clouds, he could hear the distant sounds of German vehicles retreating. His chicken coop still stood on the hillside, a testament to unconventional thinking in a conventional war. Behind him, Thornton stood alone in the empty room, the weight of his mistake crushing down on him. March 1946. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The sun was setting over the training grounds where a new generation of soldiers practiced in wooden structures that looked oddly familiar. Chicken coops, they called them affectionately now. Hayes hides. The unconventional had become doctrine. Master Sergeant William Hayes, now wearing the Distinguished Service Cross on his chest along with 2 Purple Hearts earned in the final push into Germany, stood watching the trainees. At 23, he looked older. The war had aged everyone who survived it. But his eyes still held that same patient focus, that ability to see what others missed. Beside him stood Colonel Harrison, promoted after the intelligence coup that Hayes's shot had provided. The German retreat following von Richter's death had indeed shortened the European campaign by months, maybe more. Historians were still calculating the strategic impact. "You've created something special here," William Harrison said, gesturing at the training course below. "Every branch wants their snipers trained in your methods now. The Marines, the Army Rangers, even the Navy is interested for some reason." William smiled slightly. "It's not about the structure, sir. It's about understanding that warfare isn't always about following the old playbook. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts, trust your preparation, and take the shot everyone says is impossible." A jeep pulled up behind them. Out stepped a familiar figure, older now, walking with a slight limp. Major Thornton, demoted back to captain after the war, reassigned to a logistics position far from combat commands. "Sergeant Hayes," Thornton said stiffly. "Or should I say Master Sergeant?" "Captain Thornton," William nodded. "Didn't expect to see you here. I requested the transfer," Thornton said, and for the first time William saw something different in his eyes. Not anger, not resentment. Humility. "I've spent the last 18 months thinking about that day in Vermont. About how my pride, my adherence to convention, nearly cost us everything." He extended his hand. "I was wrong, Hayes. About you, about your methods, about what makes a good soldier. I let my ego blind me to tactical reality. Men like you, you're why we won this war. And I wanted you to hear that from me, face to face." William shook his hand. "The war taught all of us something, sir. No hard feelings." Harrison cleared his throat. "Actually, Thornton here has written a training manual on adaptive command decisions, using your situation as the primary case study. It's being implemented at West Point next semester." William raised his eyebrows, genuinely surprised. "That's good work, Captain." "It's necessary work," Thornton replied. "The next war, whenever it comes, won't be won by rigid thinking. It'll be won by soldiers who can build chicken coops when the situation calls for it." Below them, a trainee took a shot from an angled position, striking a target at 400 yards. The instructor's voice carried up the hill, enthusiastic and proud. "That's it. That's the Hayes method. Unconventional position. Perfect execution." William watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the same colors he'd seen that morning in Vermont when everything changed. "Some shots you only get once," he said quietly. "The trick is being ready when they come."